right. On today's episode, I have a very special guest, Oliver Martin. He is a spiritual coach, a psychedelic guide, a plant medicine expert. And today we're going to get into the nature of reality. We're going to get into psychedelics and some of the processes involved in shifting our psyche, shifting our consciousness that plant medicine can provide. And I just had to look up recently because I didn't know, but the word psychedelic comes from the Greek soul revealed or soul uncovered. And so that's kind of the process that happens when we engage in some of these psychedelic or shamanic processes. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Oliver, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me, dear.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I was doing a little bit of research and I came across your website and started reading your content. And it's amazing. And so I was like, I got to have this guy on the show. And so today we're going to dive into psychedelic experiences and the nature of reality and why we're all here. So yeah, tell us a little bit about you, how you got into this plant medicine journey.
Well, it's been a while that I shared that. The past podcasts I've done were more like, not the backstory, but yeah. So I'm 45 and been doing all kinds of drugs all my life, while simultaneously having 3 children and a family and everything. But this is kind of like altered realities. Yeah. So I guess it was 19 or something. I came across mushrooms, and since ever then, I'm growing them, and it's kind of like you get really connected when you grow mushrooms instead of just getting them from a dealer or something.
Right.
So if you have them available, and it all is floating, then it develops out of yourself. And so when you have them and you connect it, it's kind of like you do them. And with all kinds of drugs, you do too much, you go numb or you go out or whatever. With mushrooms, it's the opposite. You go beyond, you go beyond what high can be. So at that one time 10 years ago, I kind of like went beyond. So where there's no beyond anymore. So much beyond it is. So learning simultaneously from Ramdas, Papaji, and what this all is, and through the past 10 years of living more consciously, well, this is kind of like how it all came together. And 7 years ago or so, I started to work with this stuff. Firstly on weekends with groups and with both psychedelics. In the very early beginning with DMT smoked on Fridays and Saturdays, then mushroom sessions. And what I've been doing from the initial phases, I use MAOI, like Peganum hamala seeds, together with mushrooms. So you need to take less mushrooms, but have more effects. And that is kind of like a unique thing. And so the homepage of ayahuasca.com came into place, and like everybody's talking about ayahuasca. And 7 years ago, it was all starting up. There was no big talk about 5-MeO-DMT, for example.
Right.
And so it all started, and I got the toads as my buddies. So they live kind of here, like the cats live in the house. The toads do too. So eventually, I would milk them and share their secretion. Then over the years, learn that weekends is not the way to facilitate this, because you can't probably take care with these intense
Right.
working psychedelics. It's a different thing. If you take a psychedelic, the mind stays intact and people don't go beyond that. But if you have them tripping so far away, it's very important that you have a safe ground. So it all developed. Yeah.
So most of our listeners probably don't know what you're talking about with toads, and maybe they've heard of mushrooms or ayahuasca, but we'll get into the bufo alvarius toad in a little bit here. So those are some of your playgrounds with those different psychedelics. Why? What are we all doing here in this human experience? And why do we want to use psychedelics to improve that? So I guess let's answer the first question. What's our goal here as humans as we go through this spiritual experience in a human body?
I would say God wants to experience it, him, herself.
Yeah.
So this is that's the message I got, is like, there is always been and always will be there, and not time related and nothing. It's just one. And if you have one, that one can't see itself from the outside, needs two. So this is how the creation of the duality of reality came about, and the universe was created out of the fun to experience that. And so I mean, looking out at the moment with this, whatever it is really, with coronavirus, let's call it that, and what's all happening and all the suffering we have on the planet, you might say there's a mistake or an error in the plan. But what I learned is that everything is perfect the way it is. And it doesn't matter how it looks on the surface and how I call it on the surface. It's all meant to experience the self. So it's all meant the one experience itself, where there is no one for sure and there is no itself. It's words for the wordless behind that. So, but yeah, it's because. So the correct answer, why is this all happening? Because.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's this, in the beginning, there's this void that is everything, and then it contemplates itself, right? And then there's the void and the contemplation of the void, and there's two, and then we as humans, we're consciousness, and then that's one with everything, and then we come into this human body to experience everything as separate, right? And we lose touch with that. In reality, we're still one with everything, right?
Yeah.
That's
what I.
Yeah. And so why do we use psychedelics? How can those help in our journey here?
First of all, I don't call them medicines, because you initially use that word and many people use it, and it's become kind of like a habitual thing to call it medicine because we humans think we are sick,
Yeah.
But we're not. We just had that we are all on a trip, so who's sick there, yeah? What is true is that most of us have forgotten that we're on a trip. It's like there's this beautiful thing from Bill Hicks. You know that? We're on a ride. It's just a ride. You know Bill Hicks, maybe?
No, I don't.
For everyone out there, look up Bill Hicks YouTube. It's a ride. It's just a ride. We're in an amusement park here, and we're just on a ride. And he's writing it down. And yeah. I hope so.
I always take notes.
It's so amazing. It's so sweet, Bill Hicks. And it's just a ride, we always forget that. And there's people who want to tell us it's just a ride, and they are locked away, and they're criminalized, But it's just a ride. And if you don't forget that, you can go through this. And specifically at the moment with this interesting times, it's just a ride. And that makes it so beautiful. So back to your question, psychedelics are a possibility. So there's no you should, you must, this is the medicine per se, this is what can heal everything or cure everything. For some people, it's a very beneficial tool. Others, just go out on a walk in the forest, and someday it just makes boom, and they're in the midst of the forest, becoming the forest. So that happens too. So natural awakenings, you can call that. And many people who come to me, they have that, then they go on a search to repeat that, ending in the, hey, psychedelics can give me a repetition of that. And then I make them realize, hey, there's no, like you do this and you can have an instant enlightenment thing with this. It's not happening like this. But for some people, it's very beneficial. I would say psychedelics can be very beneficial for people who have like deep sit stuff, like PTSD stuff, and traumatic stuff. However, and that's very important, with these people, it's not that you have high dose stuff, where the initial idea is it's medicine which keeps healing stuff in me, or medicine which kind of keeps me, like the shamanic approach is like purge bad energies, purge bad stuff. I don't believe in this. Where I see a benefit in doing therapeutical work with psychedelics is that you have a kind of like a therapeutical setting where you go, where the therapist is together with the client, with the patient, for a time like 4-6 weeks. And in that time frame, you do like 3, 4, 5 mushroom sessions, where you then low dose or normal dose mushroom sessions. So where it's not about to go far out, but to raise up content and then go through this in talk therapy, in awareness therapy, So, and it's very important that the therapist is not the therapist, but the human being sitting together with you and listening from the heart. So this is because, people write me and can you help me cure blah, blah, this and that. Yeah. And I can't do this because I only work high dose. And to me, typically only people come who who are just one step away, you know,
Yeah.
so who got the theory, who lived a good life, so they're already aware that they don't have to, you see, if someone who's 20 writes me and is obsessed about with this idea, like I want to have a non-dual experience, I want to kill my ego, yeah. So I usually say like, hey, you're 20, why don't you first live life before you go crazy about dying? And so the typical clients I have is like mid-30s, like they lived a life, they had their career, they had all their stuff, and then they realize, hey, stuff doesn't make me happy. And then comes typically around the 30th year, you know, there comes this spiritual awakening thing where people realize there gotta be more in life. And then they have the theory, and then a 5-MeO or a high dose mushroom session can give them the push, you know.
It's so funny. You're speaking directly to me because I got into this journey, you know, at around 30. I'm 34 now, and psychedelics have been a part of it the last year or two. And for me, like, they're a great teacher. They bring into consciousness things that we often ignore, right? Our ego hides these things, and when we're using psychedelics, they come up and they show us, hey, look, you're ignoring this. This is part of your life or part of you that you need to integrate or change. And there's no judgment with it, right? And so we get to see ourselves from a different perspective. And then my experience, I'd love to hear from you. It doesn't do the work for us, right? Like, it'll show you this thing, and then when you go out into the world, like, it doesn't automatically change you. You still have to do the work, but it gives you a different awareness. Is that fair to say?
Yes. However, I wouldn't say that it does this. You do it yourself. It's
Sure.
conscious. It's your true consciousness, your true being, talking with your subconscious mind. I'm also not using the word ego that much because it is attached to a very negative view. See, actually, the mind is just a tool, and it's behaving as if it's the boss. However, it's not about making it a slave, how you can see with and hear with many people, but to make it a friend. You can see what, because love doesn't need a slave or a mastery. Love is like about friendship, about love. Yeah, I mean,
And
so this is
And even, well, I was going to say the words that we use affect our relationship with ourselves, right? So if we call our subconscious or our mind our slave, it's just like, it's a different internal energy than if it's a friend that we work with.
Yeah. Many people use the word ego and looking down on it. It's just the ego, you know.
Yeah.
It's the egoic mind. It's kind of as if there's a mistake involved. However, there is none. It's actually, if you picture it more like the little boy. I mean, in our cases, or the little lady, the little girl, with female humans, it's exactly that. It's what the little child in you had learned when you were a little child.
Yes.
And like, you know, there's no mistake involved. It's just what's been learned. And I don't think it's about unlearning that. It's about accepting that, loving that, embracing that, and being grateful for it. So then it all starts to happen, you know. And I'm not this holy guru something guy. I'm just a 45-year-old father of 3 and have a garden and stuff, you know, and I have the same crappy stuff going on in my mind, like, you know, which is it's there, but it doesn't matter anymore these days, you know. It's just like there, and it's allowed to be there, and it's not like I have a problem here, I gotta cure that, I gotta take care for that, I gotta shift that or purge that or transform it. I just say, hey, you know, Olli, that's it. And it's okay, you know, if you don't feed it with too much attention anymore, it doesn't grow on you. And then again, it's there, and you have a day where you just pull the plug and say, okay, today I'm fucked. I'm not doing anything. And then actually, well, man, maybe you have 4 or 3 days where you were running around like crazy and you needed that day.
Yeah.
What do you know? So that's the thing, you know, life is always having the best plan.
Yeah. So, all right. So I love how you said all that. It's amazing. And for me, the psychedelics have taught me to accept parts of myself that I didn't want to accept. So let's talk about maybe the 3 types today: the mushrooms, the ayahuasca, and the bufo. And for our listeners let's say the majority of them aren't interested, they're never going to have that experience, but they still want the lessons, they still want the principles, and they want the takeaways from a psychedelic journey. So let's start with mushrooms, and we'll say, you know, how that journey with mushrooms, how a session would work, and then what lessons we take away from that? Maybe some typical lessons. And so when we're sitting down to do mushrooms, how do we journey through that experience?
I'm listening to your question. I'm just like, what do you answer on that? I mean, you see, I'm that guy, you know, I'm taking it down to the active ingredient drug, which is inside the compound. Yeah. So in the case of mushrooms, you have psilocin, that is 4-hydroxy-DMT. And in the case of ayahuasca, you have harmaline, and the active psychedelic ingredient would be DMT, yeah, and DMT. So, and with 5-MeO-DMT, bufo alvarius secretion, or best the synthesized version, because the poor toad shouldn't be milked, yeah. So it is 5-MeO-DMT, and if you listen closely, it's 4-hydroxy-DMT, DMT, and 5-MeO-DMT. So, yeah. The thing is, you have 3 different drugs, all dimethyltryptamine drugs, and they act in a different way in your system. 2 of them are endogenous, that's DMT and that's 5-MeO-DMT. However, are typically released in different situations. I believe that DMT is the molecule which is, you know, which makes you dream so vividly and so amazingly. And 5-MeO-DMT is the substance, like the bright light experience, which you experience when you die. And 4-hydroxy-DMT, that's the psilocin, the mushroom molecule, back to your initial question, yeah, is I mean, you see, typically you don't take 5-MeO-DMT orally, but if you take DMT orally, it's a 4 or 5 hour ride. So from those 3, 4-hydroxy-DMT, psilocin is the longest working. You're always in for like 6-7 hour ride. And if you ask me, I would always prefer the mushrooms, because, you know, they are growing there, you pick them and you play. It's as easy as that. No lighter needed to burn some secretion, or before that even milking or extracting, or taking a plant and grounding it to powder and having yopo, or cooking the ayahuasca brew. You just pick the mushroom, go inside, you have enough, and gone. And so the mushroom is like kind of like the master key, and it's the longest working of those 3. And I would say the mushroom has even though, you know, I initially said I'm coming from the chemical part, yeah,
right.
Interestingly, the 4-hydroxy-DMT gives you a sense of a warm, embraced, hugged feeling of a presence, you know, like hugging you through the whole process. It sounds like, I don't know.
It has to be experienced. It's out of this world.
Yeah. So, you know, if anybody out there is asking themselves, what should I do? I mean, take legal precautions, yeah. But we're not saying break the law at your,
right.
You know, or maybe better do. But mushrooms is their thing, you know. So the other thing is very beautiful. A typical smaller dose mushrooms is very something not that dangerous. However, you're tripping for a good amount of time. It's always good to have a sitter, and that's by the way is what I am doing. I'm not a guide. So you have best a sitter with you who's experienced, or in lower dosage, you say it's okay if it's someone who you totally like 100% trust. But yeah, nevertheless, the mushroom allows, you know, for, well, I wanted to say allows for mistakes, but actually there are no mistakes in life. So what?
Right.
Yeah, the mushroom is the most gentle one of those 3. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, so like on a mushroom journey, you know, for me it's generally around 3 grams. And I get, yeah, what's that?
Cubensis, I guess.
Yes. And then,
I mean, 3 grams mushrooms is not 3 grams mushrooms. You see, it depends on the speed.
It's yeah. So, if you know, for me, it kind of goes in phases, and I don't know if this is the experience for everybody, but I have like an initial kind of body high, and then very visual, and then I get into like emotional and teachings and insights, and is that kind of a typical journey for most people who do this?
The body thing you're mentioning is like the coming up.
Yep.
It's kind of like your system tunes in or tunes out of normal perception into like higher awareness. So that's that, and that goes along with physical. It's physical, very. It's a task, you know. So it's disturbing physically, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
However, not for everyone, but typically it is that. It also depends on the species a little bit. Then the phase you were describing with intense hallucinations or visions or fractals or visual stuff
Yep.
overall. That's depending on the dose, that's the phase where you can also have a non-dual experience. If the dose is so high, that's beyond 3 grams, like 15, 20.
Mm-hmm.
If you have plain cubensis, um, then all these colors and fractals and visions are dissolving into a lightning experience, just like with the 5-MeO-DMT, and then you dissolve in everything, and there's no one dissolving in it. It's all dissolving in itself, so to speak. So it's not someone is having a trip, but the trip is happening, so to speak. And when you come out of that, it's exactly what you said. It's like emotional stuff or processing of stuff. It's
Mm-hmm.
very good and beneficial phase. You've been set together as a human, so to speak. It's like kind of like the whole thing is an energetical and physical, like serotonin level and everything. Yeah, it washes all through your system. It realigns your energies and and balances you out. Yeah. And in that process, while this is happening and it's all put together, you know, it's this phase of like it all sorts, you know, it's like marbles falling through a hole, and
Yeah.
it all sorts out. Yeah. So this is the phase you've been describing it, the third phase. And yeah, and then that's typically what. And you have that though with ayahuasca as well. It's just like it's shorter amount
Yeah.
overall.
And on mushrooms, it's like it's really beautiful. Like you can, the music, I listen to, you know, sometimes classical. I got really into like Native American flute music during it, and
Mhm.
the kind of the visions of what you see and the patterns are different based on the music, right? And the whole vibe is different, and
Yeah.
you become the music, and the energy in your body becomes the music, and the visions become the music, and uh it's it's amazing. It's one of the most beautiful experiences I think you can have as a human,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, indeed. Um, I typically work with very subtle sounds like Brian Eno, which is more like an ambient. It's
Uh-huh.
actually he named it ambience because it's just like part of the lightning or the vibration of the room.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have any kind of melody or classic or pop or electronic or whatever you have, it gives the mind a direction. You know, you
Yes.
follow the stream, the melody stream. It's a different kind of vibrational field if you have melody in the wavelength of melody or of just sounds. Yeah, like a soundscape. It's not single sounds. It's Brian Eno's very cool. He creates soundscapes,
Okay.
and it's very interesting because I use this in sessions as well. And if and I share those tracks afterwards, and people, if they meditate and listen to the sounds, they tune in to the experience again because it's so connected. It's
They
such
anchor to it. Yeah.
yeah.
In
It's
hypnosis, that's like an anchor. So in that phase of kind of realizations on mushrooms, what are some common things people realize? Because for me, it's a lot to do with judgment and self-love and oneness, and what do people generally experience on those lessons? Like, is there kind of a range of common experiences and teachings?
well, there again, you know, I wouldn't say it's about that the 5-hydroxy-DMT, the mushrooms have a specific like, you know, the main difference, what I already said, is that there's a gentle feeling around it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like for hydroxy-DMT has a more gentle approach when it's active in the brain. Um, there is no typical stuff because it all really relies on the dose you have. Like, it's very important what kind of dose you have, and in what kind of mood you are, what kind of music you
Mm-hmm.
play, what kind of surrounding you have, if you're alone or not. It's all these. There are many different things which play a role into this, and um, it has a whole bandwidth of stuff which can happen. I mean, obviously, you just said it. You're a year into the process, so people who have been doing psychedelics over years, for them, it's they have maybe different things which happen during a trip, and people who get new into it, they are more like really blown away by the whole.
Mm-hmm.
How could I miss this one? You know, and so there's no, I can't say there's a per se thing that happens, and it strongly depends on how much stuff you carry around with yourself, how much stuff there is to like kind of process.
Right.
It's, and again, because this teases always people to like, I got to do this. You got to be in a certain mind space for this. If you're on a trip like, I got to get rid of myself,
Mm-hmm.
it's not working. You got to be in peace with yourself in a certain way, or you got to be in a at a time in your life where you are open for change. If you are not, you get really crazy from the psychedelic per se, not necessarily from mushrooms, 5-me, or
Right.
it's just you can't handle it, and you get very crazy, and depending on the dose again too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it until, I don't know, 31 or 32. And I'd had, some years of like processing and growing up and being through things and reading books and understanding myself. And so when I had the experience, I could kind of frame it, but I feel like people that aren't mature enough for that wouldn't have a reference for it. Right.
Well, I have to say it's not necessarily the maturity. It's just like kind of how much life do you have lived? I had 21-year-old clients who had been abused early on in their life, and went through orphanages and all kinds of terrible stuff, you would say, but it made them grow, into the person they are, and they went way past of the whining mind, and grew a lot through these years. So I remember vividly a lovely lady client, 21, and she had a very unique and amazing 5-me experience, like as if she would be 10 years older, because that was the case with her, because she was already at a space of total gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
She went through so much pain and stuff, that she was at a place where she realized that all of this happened for a reason, and gratitude took the place of suffering. So
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go into ayahuasca, which seems to be kind of the enlightened drug of choice for our generation, and it's kind of a buzzword, and it's a great topic at parties. And I had an experience, and I had a beautiful experience where I experienced like a past life or a life as a Native American warrior, and kind of oneness with nature and leadership and power, and it was truly transforming. And so, what is ayahuasca, and what's the experience in ayahuasca, and how's that different from mushrooms?
May I first ask, where have you done it? In the rainforest, or?
I did it in California, in the United States.
Okay. I'm asking because the stuff are kind of like vision you've been describing,
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting because I personally believe, that a lot of the visionary content is what we already have in here.
Right.
So since many people hear this like snakes stories, like the anaconda, which I believe comes a lot from the typical Icaros of the Shipibo people specifically, that it's kind of like a snake character, like an anaconda character. But it's so typically that everyone repeats these kind of visions because they've been hearing about it, like YouTube, whatever, friends, and so on and so forth. So it's already up here, and then the psychedelic comes and just like creates out of it, creates something out of it. So I have had ayahuasca in the form of like pure orally DMT, meaning like I had the seeds, Peganum hamala seeds, as a MAOI source, monoamine oxidase source. And additionally to that, I had like self-extracted DMT, 400 milligram, which is quite a high dose. You just dissolve that in citric acid or citric juice, and have that, drink that, so there's no nausea and everything. Yeah, typically what ayahuasca is, it's a brew of two main ingredients, which is a liane, it's Banisteriopsis capi, which contains the hammerline as well. So the seeds I've been mentioning is Pegano hamala. It's a seed. It's a plant which has a high content of hammerline and hamine. That's the drugs in the seeds. So it's much better to take the seeds, because the plant flowers a few times per year, I guess 2 times per year. So it's very ecological, economical. The thing is, with the liane, you have to cut down an old plant, already 4 or 5 years old, it needs to be. And then you cut the plant, cook the plant, and the plant is dead, you know. So this is why I'm always, you know, advertising for using Pegano hamala seeds instead of the typical liane. But originally it's Banisteriopsis capi liane, and as the MAOI source, MAOI means monoamine oxidase inhibitor. That's monoamine oxidase, and it's an enzyme in your system which is responsible to take away, like, to render useless poisonous stuff in your system. Like when you have alcohol, alcohol is much more poisonous than you trip from it. If tripping is the right word here. So the monoamine oxidase takes a good portion of that alcohol and renders it useless. And with DMT, it's kind of like the same, because DMT, no, it's not kind of like the same, it's absolutely the same. You swallow DMT in your stomach, it typically gets docked on by the MAO, and you won't have an experience. So this is why you take an MAOI, an inhibitor of the enzyme.
Gotcha.
So the enzyme can't be active. So in that sense, this is what the hammerline is needed for, the liane is needed for. And typically in the Amazon, they use a shrub called Psychotria viridis, Chacruna named. There's also another one, Chaliponga, Diplopteris cabrerana, it's called. And these plants, they contain DMT and very tiny fragments, 5-mer DMT. So these two plants are cooked in a brew, and that brew is called ayahuasca. Yeah, the Indios also call the liane just the liane ayahuasca, and there are a few tribes calling it yache, and they only use the liane. But this is not what we are talking about. I guess what you had is a typical DMT experience, orally DMT experience. Another thing which is very common is that you can extract the DMT and you vaporize it. This is what Joe Rogan a lot talking about in the past. It's like the typical Terence McKenna machine of stories. It's smoke. Yeah.
So Terence McKenna was a famous psychonaut who often talks about going into this realm with beautiful fractal patterns and these machine elves. And it seems that never had this, but that a lot of people seem to see these machine elves, right?
Yeah, because they read about it. That's the thing, you see.
Gotcha.
My view on all of this is, as long as you see something, there's someone to see it. Yeah, and you definitely, to make sense of a psychedelic, in my personal perspective, it makes sense to go beyond the seer, to become the seeing. And that means you also can't remember then the core of the experience, because no mind, no brain, no storage, no memory, you know? So typically, if you have a non-dual experience, even inside of a normal trip, it can happen that for fragments of minutes, you're gone, you know, like you don't, I had a black hole or something, you know, I can't remember what happened at that time frame. It's because, you know, you went beyond, you know, the me, the I, the one having the experience. So yeah, but back to the ayahuasca, it's a 4 to 5 hour trip. If it's taken orally, if you smoke it, it's only 10 minutes. Yeah, depending on the dose, it can be very intense. But again, that can also be with mushrooms the case. It's all about dose, yeah?
Right.
It's all about dose, the intensity of the experience, and what you get back from the experience, like a non-dual experience, which is kind of like the peak of experiencing, because you become the experience. It goes beyond experiencing. That's always like if you fully dose a drug, a psychedelic drug. So you can have that with ayahuasca as well, with DMT as well. Many people say like 5-MeO is the one thing, DMT is too weak for that, and it's bullshit. You just have to smoke enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know, it's depending on the dose. And like you said, the stuff you had, I personally would believe it comes from the messages, the information you have had before that. Like it's connected to shamanism, it's connected to these Amazonic stuff, to the kind of like the information you had before is going into the kind of a trip.
Yeah.
I mean, the only way to figure out if that's the case or not would be to have absolutely no information about a drug and then do it.
Right.
So if you can find someone who never heard about ayahuasca and give him ayahuasca and they experience kind of like whatever stuff, which has nothing to do with Amazon, ayahuasca, anaconda, whatever. Yeah, but you know, it doesn't matter. It's yeah.
Well, it's like our perceptions and our beliefs shape our experiences, and that, you know, shows up within psychedelics as well. When we expect something, we have it. And, you know, with ayahuasca, a lot of people talk about the nausea and the vomiting ahead of time as this purge. And I think people expect that. Mine was not too intense, but you talked about the way that you do it. You don't have that nausea energetic experience, right?
Well, I've done a few times just the crystals, I guess 2 times. And I also made the brew, and I also had a 2-day ayahuasca session or retreat with 2 Shipibo Indian, not in Peru, but in the Netherlands. But at least there were 2 Shipibo coming there, and I had original Shipibo ayahuasca, so I can compare also that. Mm-hmm. And it's disgusting as crazy. Specifically, and the reason is because you cook down the whole plant material. Yeah, Chacruna viridis is not very powerful, it's not very potent. Yeah, it has like 0.2%, 0.3% active alkaloids, NMDMT alkaloids. So what you do is you take like a pile of leaves. And guess what? You wouldn't grind them and swallow them. If you would, you would purge the shit out of yourself. It's like, it's logical. You wouldn't, if you would do this. I mean, many people get sick from 2-gram kratom, yeah. And with kratom, you have to eat the leaves, yeah. But it's really like, imagine you have to eat 200 or 200 grams of leaves, yeah. No one would do this. But if you cook it out like over hours, you make a concentrate of that. Surely to grab out the NMDMT, but also you get all the ingredients of the leaves out, all the other chemicals which are in there. You have this full extract. It contains all the stuff which makes you nauseous. So this is why with ayahuasca there is this physical nausea. Surely, yeah, it's part of kind of like the process that the mind creates out of this purging mechanism. Yeah, it creates this, I purged my negative energies, I purged my demons, I purged my bad stuff. You get the picture. So it's kind of like connected to that, but the potential, the full potential the DMT experience, or let's call the ayahuasca experience, has, comes not from the plant, but from the active ingredient DMT, and you can have that without the nausea. However, I know like there's dozens of people standing up in the room right now who are all shamanic believers, and they would say, how dare you, you know? I mean, you ask me, am I a shaman? No, I'm not. And I believe that shamanism is a religion, and I really don't want to, you know, it's not what I'm interested in. I see the things naked down to the core, let's say. Yeah, I'm also not believing that I'm going into interconnection with the plant teacher or with the plant consciousness or something, because I don't see a plant consciousness and a human consciousness. I see consciousness as all of it. So like I said initially to you, the stuff happening inside of a psychedelic experience is that the consciousness gets in contact with the subconscious mind. And if there is a message transmitted, then it's your heart talking to your head, so to speak. And since the mind, yeah, rules the world, we are all constantly like, you know, all up in our head all the time. It's so beneficial if the heart rules the head once. and that is what afterwards grows. So actually becoming more human means you're more living out of the heart. You're
Yes.
more living out of intuition. You're more living out of the moment instead of planning ahead around. And yeah, well, that's the process of yeah, what I would say becoming spiritual. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Well said. So, all right, we've touched on mushrooms, we've touched on ayahuasca, and then now is the bufo toad, which I just experienced last week. I told you a little bit about that. So, what in the hell is bufo, and why are we smoking toad?
And, well, you're not smoking toad. You're smoking. I guess I don't know what you had, but most likely you would have vaporized the
Yes.
secretion of the bufo virus toad. Yeah.
Yes.
And there's only one toad, the bufo virus toad, known to men to produce a hallucinogenic drug. If you don't count bufotonin itself, it can be psychedelic. However, it's not an easy one. And the 5-MeO-DMT is made out of bufotonin, which the bufo virus toad produces also, just like the other toads. But they also have a kind of like a methoxy enzyme, yeah, which I hope I do it right, but methoxylates, yeah, the bufotonin into 5-MeO-DMT. Bufotonin is 5-OH-DMT, so it transforms this into 5-MeO, but only in this specific toad because only bufo alvarius has this enzyme. And when you milk, that's what the term is they use. It's kind of like the toad has glands behind the ears, yeah, also at the legs and the forearms. And when you squeeze these glands, and I'm not talking about like touch them, yeah, or tingle them, or like, you know, make them angry or something, because they never get angry. They're so cool, these toads. Yeah. What you have to do is like you have to squeeze that thing as if it is the biggest pimple of your sister or something. Who has acne. Yeah. I'm just saying. So this is also where the toad says, fuck you, I don't like this, you know, and I really don't like it. And so I stopped doing this,
You
but
said that.
obviously a lot of people do this still in Mexico. It pays, you know. There's meanwhile, I heard that there's meanwhile these drug cartels, you know, sending people inside, you know, milking the toads and then selling the stuff. So is a big market coming out of this hype it has. Nevertheless, the active ingredient is 5-MeO-DMT, 5-methoxy-DMT. So the chemical interesting part is the MEO. 5 just names the position on which the MEO sits on the DMT molecule. But this MEO changes the whole ball game. Not only makes it is more potent, because the full dose 5-MeO-DMT is 12 to 15 milligram, where the full dose NN-DMT would be 50 to 60 milligram. Yeah, not like 10 times like a few guys say, but 4 times maybe more potent. So you only have 12 milligrams and you vaporize them. And what happens is you melt into the sun. It's an experience. I mean,
It's what
yeah, maybe you can say that that's right.
it's and so listen, I'm gonna preface this like I'm not into drugs. I don't really drink. I've never liked weed. I've done. Did I lose you? Oh, you're still there. So
you're froze.
yeah, we're good now. So I've just done a couple of these experiences to get some insights into myself, some different perspectives, and that was really the purpose of doing Bufo. And it was horrifying, to be completely honest. So I'll share my story and then we'll kind of unpack it, I guess. So I did Bufo with just, you know, the hopes of becoming my best self, realizing things about myself. I've heard stories from people doing it and they have these amazing, enlightening experiences. And so you take a drag on this vaporizer and then you lay back and like instantly you're like, if you're watching a TV screen and it just goes, you're just static energy and then you're out of your body. Like there's no body. And so for me, I got pulled into this like energetic realm of kind of darkness. And there's these patterns, these geometric patterns moving in all directions. And the mind starts to run. And I found myself like panicking, right? But it's going so fast that you can't shift it. Like with mushrooms or ayahuasca, you can kind of breathe and realize, oh, this is a trip. But on this, it's like, it's so intense that you're just gone. And so I'm in this realm, and it's like, honestly, it felt like it was ripping apart my consciousness. And it was hell. It was terrifying. And in this zone, it's like this zone where there's no God. And I could just only have brief images of people that I love. And I know that I'm loved, but their love can't access this realm. It was the most horrifying thing ever. And I was like, I just want my life back. And I remember thinking that, and I'm like, this is what hell is. And I'm psychotic now. And then I go into this, you kind of talked about it, this phase of like, and remember, this is timeless. So I think I'm stuck in this dimension for eternity. And then I went into this phase of like, my awareness was gone. And I think that's what you talked about earlier, is this non-dual experience where usually your memory's wiped. And then from there, I went into like this realm of pure light and gold and this geometric pattern where these vibrations were like these incredible vibrations. And I have no body, so I don't know how I'm feeling it, but I just knew and heard and felt, and I'm just pure awareness in this realm. And then I'm shot back into my body, and it's like, that's how it feels, like you're shot back into it. And I remember opening my eyes, and like having the biggest rush of adrenaline. I jumped up, I ripped my shirt off. And I'm just talking about it, I'm experiencing it again. I felt like I had been through hell and survived it, and now I was invincible. Like death, like we all fear death, but I had wished in that scenario, I had wished for death. So now that I was out of it, death was nothing. You know, like it's like it takes your fear, it consumes you so completely in it that it just wipes it like, it's like experiencing a trauma, but processing through the whole trauma all at once with no option, so that when you come out of it, you're free from it. Is that an accurate description?
In your case, it all sounds like absolutely what happened. Yes.
Yeah. And so
in the beginning, see, the darkish stuff. Yeah. Can you imagine you've been stuck there and not getting the light and not getting the reborn thing, you know? And this is what can happen with people, you know? So this is why it's so important that it happens at the right time, at the right stage of development. Luckily, people where it happens that they get stuck, yeah, they can't remember anything afterwards. But you can clearly see this from the outside because they freak out the shit.
Yeah.
They freak the shit out of themselves. And so you see, you've been blessed to have had that experience. And yeah, and now begins the real trip, because now you can see, you know, where it still got you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how to stay loving and true to yourself, you know, by not saying, you know, it's the crazy ego, you know, but by loving yourself the way you are. And you can't die, you know. I mean, in core, the best outcome of this experience is just absolutely clear. Death is non-existent. It's only what actually it's death is, or let it say it's another word. Death is not the opposite of life. Death is the opposite of birth, and life is eternal. So
yes, well said.
And, yeah.
So when I came out of this, it was like I was roaring. I was like the ultimate, like nothing can stop me, right? And that was an amazing feeling. And I remember thinking moments afterwards that hell that I had gone through was probably what Jesus went through between the death and resurrection, or a spiritual being, that like that purification process. And it's like it just pulls fear out of your nervous system, right? Is that kind of what it does?
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, you know, in your case, that's all the perfect description. I can tell you that the experience itself is so intense and so fast that it triggers the panic button in the brain. Yeah, totally. Like it over floods it, so to speak. Yeah. So So in a sense, you know, it's really important that you have that you're at the right time, at the right spot in your life,
Yes.
and that everything fits together, you know. And I mean, there are people going out of this not very well, and you know, I have a very strict like sign up procedure to see what I'm dealing with when I'm signing up people. And but other people just sign up, you know, they just don't give a shit
Yeah.
about who's coming there. They just want their money. So so it's you know, it's I have a few people who wrote me like ending up in a mental, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like I wrote you, you know, it's quite common to have intense flashback well sensations.
Yes.
Yeah. And you gotta be really in peace to not freak out on that stuff, you know. So yeah,
And,
obviously you were at the right time at the right spot. So
and I hope this is not a commercial for anybody, because if anybody was curious about doing bufo, I would tell them not to do it. That would be my general recommendation. I'm glad I did it, and I'll never do it again. But it was an incredibly powerful experience, and like I've been studying hypnosis, NLP, spirituality, everything I can for the last couple of years, and so when I came out of that experience, I was able to like take that, make meaning of it, guide my focus. And I can't imagine doing that without those tools. Right. And just, I think I would be in shock, and I was able to reframe them and really access energetic and downloads. Still, like, I'm realizing things every day about my ego, about myself. I close my eyes and I'm like still shot out of my body. And so it's the craziest experience. I can't explain it, but hopefully our listeners get an idea of what happens and what can be learned from these
yeah,
experiences.
yeah, it's, you know, it has a huge potential, but it's not the instant pill to enlightenment, and neither it is the all-time cure for everything. So
Right.
but it's as amazing as you describe it. It's see, there's another thing attached to is the Mio. The way the Mio works in the brain is very, it tingles also very much on this euphoric button. So this jumping around, like you can do everything. That's a typical dopamine rush, yeah.
Yeah.
So you have that when when you do cocaine, yeah, as well. These people are also like this, you know, or crack cocaine, you know. It's like it's the typical dopamine rush, and this is where many people get hooked on 5-MeO these days. It's no joke, you know. So a few of the people also doing sessions where we can typically see, you know, it's not the client is not important, or you know what's it all about. It's about
Yeah.
you know them, yeah, and so it has this thing that you want to repeat to it because it makes you so much alive, so intensely euphoric. Um, but I personally learned that this is really a once in a lifetime kind of experience thing.
Yes.
Like you said, why would you do it again when you know A, you can't die, and B, you will die anyway. Yeah?
Yeah.
So when the day comes, it comes. Now you're prepared.
Yeah.
That you don't have to be afraid, that it's all okay, and that life is the trip, and that you, hey, thank you, I am alive, you know?
And one thing I realized from this as well was that, you know, that insanity, that psychosis of thinking that trip was life now. I think most of us in our daily lives have that psychosis when we hear the voice in our head and we hear our judgments and we think that's us and we think that's our experience, but it's not, right? It's temporary. We can become the observer of our trip. We can become the observer of our thoughts, of our judgments, and step back into that one consciousness.
Yeah, and absolutely. It's I always say like a psychedelic session is a fastened mirror to normal life suffering, because you take the drug, then the mind can't control reality as it knows it is, yeah,
Yes.
anymore, goes crazy, freaks out, finds peace, comes back, and is calm and peaceful again, and learned a lot, yeah, meaning you you know, you push as long as you can, then you fall down, can't go any further, and then you stand up, go through the door, and don't need to bump your head at the wall anymore. So and this is a psychedelic session. It's kind of like intensifying it in a smaller time frame, and this is why it's so beneficial. But you know, life has has these things all the time. Next time you go angry with someone, you can watch yourself going angry, realizing, okay, wait a minute, I'm not running against the wall. I take the door, apologize, and you're cool. Or leave the room, calm down, go back and apologize, and you're cool. Where you before would have beaten the other one, I don't know, to the ground or something,
Yeah.
So we're all growing, and that's, it's all, it's mirroring this. Everything is kind of like a reflection of life, and so psychedelics are a possible thing, not a necessary thing.
And it's, facing our fears, confronting them, facing our judgments, and releasing them, and accessing more love and gratitude and presence, and really awareness of our program responses. I think that's a lot of what these psychedelics do, and so they've been a great teacher. I think if they're used incrementally, occasionally, they can teach you amazing things. Again, I'm not the kind of guy that's like, this is the way, and I'm jumping all in. So it's not my thing, but to experience and to learn from it has been really beautiful. And then to really apply it into the world and take those lessons and become them in daily life, I think is the important part of the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't be said any better. That's life is the real trip. So, I mean, look out. Yeah, we have this coronavirus something thing, and God knows where it is driving us. Everyone, we have all our suspicion about it. Like in Germany, we had like 1+ million protests against Corona, where television says it was like 17,000. And there are many people believing that. So it's very interesting how the whole coin, how it all will develop. Yeah. I mean, I guess we're in a very interesting time. There's this Chinese saying, like, it's a curse to live in an interesting time, right? Or it's a blessing to live in an interesting time. So we have both of them all the time now. And thank you for being on that trip. That's I keep on saying myself, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. It's been amazing, and I hope our guests will take something away from this to live life more consciously. And definitely, if they're interested, your content, your some of your blogs on your website are amazing, and we'll share the link to that. But if you want to share with people where they can find you, that'd be great.
Well, you want me to pronounce my homepage, to spell my homepage?
Yeah, that'd be great.
www.psilohusca.com, psilohuasca.com. So it's like psilo from psilocybin and huasca from the ayahuasca.
Okay, so psilohuasca.com. This has been Oliver Martin. Thanks for joining us on the Spohntrained podcast.
Thank you so much, my dear.
My pleasure.